The case of the Queen versus Bolton, in which Councillor Edward Bolton, a town councillor and former mayor, is accused by his secretary of indecent assault, should finish today. Yesterday, the secretary, Gillian Hayes, who is 18, denied that the alleged assault was a figment of her immature imagination. She told the court that Councillor Bolton first blew on her neck and then put his hand down the back of her blouse. Councillor Bolton himself is expected to go into the witness box this morning to give his account of the incident. In court yesterday was his wife, Mrs. Edith Bolton.
What is your full name, please?
Edward James Bolton.
And where do you live?
18 Rosewood Drive, Fulchester.
And you're a town councillor, Mr. Bolton?
I am.
And a former mayor of this borough?
I am.
Can you cast your mind back, please, to the afternoon of the 14th of July this year?
Yes.
What were you doing?
I was dictating a letter to my secretary.
Gillian Hayes?
Yes.
Were you seated?
No, I find it easier dictating if I'm walking about. I seem to be able to think much better.
Did you walk about on this occasion?
Walked about, stood about.
Where exactly did you stand?
Well, at some stage I must have stood behind her chair.
But you don't have a firm recollection of ever standing behind a chair?
No. Well, you see, I was busy thinking about this letter I was trying to dictate. I'm not very clever.
Who was the letter to, by the way?
An old lady in my ward, a Mrs. Bennett. She'd been complaining about having rats in her house.
And you'd been looking into her problems?
Of course.
One of the many problems that you investigate on behalf of the citizens of Fulchester every year.
Oh, I look into hundreds every year.
That many. So, you are standing and dictating to your secretary, Councillor Bolton. How exactly were you standing?
Well, I think at some stage I must have put my hand on the back of her chair. I sometimes do.
But that's not just on Miss Hayes' chair, is it?
Oh, no, I have other secretaries than Gillian.
How many more?
5, all told.
Any of them ever complained of your conduct, Councillor Bolton?
Not one.
Why did they leave your employment?
Most of them to get married.
Now, regarding this habit of yours of resting your hand on the back of your secretary's chair, is it a habit, or do you do it for any...
I have a bad back, a slipped disc, or at least that's what they call a bad back these days. I do it to give myself a bit of a rest.
Think carefully before you answer my next question, Councillor. Did you rest your hand on the back of Miss Hayes' chair on the afternoon of July the 14th?
Well, I think I must have at some stage. It's the only explanation I can think of for her saying my hand was down her back.
When in fact it was merely resting on the back of the chair and probably an accidental contact with her body.
Yes.
I protest, Your Honour. My learned friend is doing exactly what he accused me of doing, leading his own witness.
I rather think the charge is justified, Mr. Dealey.
What happened when Miss Foster came into the office, Councillor?
She acted sort of startled. Half fell off her chair and rushed out of the office.
She half fell off her chair, which we've already seen is not particularly difficult for someone sitting cross-legged on that particular chair. Were her legs crossed?
I think there must have been. It was her way of sitting while she took a letter.
What was your impression of Miss Hayes while she was under your employment, Councillor? I mean, what sort of a girl did she seem to you?
Timid, easily upset, and not in very good health either.
Did she take time off for health reasons?
Odd days.
Now, you heard her complain that you made 1 or 2 unwelcome gestures towards her while she was in your employment.
Miss Hayes was more definite than that, Your Honour. She said the defendant made a lot of unwelcome gestures, if gestures is the word.
I'm obliged to my learned friend. Now, about the allegations she has made about you putting your arm around her waist. Now, this would be a little more deliberate, wouldn't it?
Well, I might have done once or twice, but only in friendliness. I'm that sort of chap. I'm friendly with everybody.
A genial man.
That's right.
And as you've said, a town councillor and former mayor.
Yes.
An official of your church.
I am.
A religious man, in fact.
Brought up to it.
And secretary of the... what exactly is the Trades and Labour Council?
Well, it's made up of representatives of the trades unions and other such like organisations.
And all these positions of yours are highly social?
Highly.
So you could hardly afford to be a misanthrope then, could you?
Come again.
A hater of your fellow man.
I wouldn't last long if I were.
Indeed you wouldn't, Mr. Bolton. So you say that if you touched or annoyed Miss Hayes in any way, you did so unwittingly?
Absolutely.
And of course we've heard that the second member of your staff had no reason for complaint.
That's quite right.
Miss Foster did say, however, that after Miss Hayes had left the office, you said to her, "She was enjoying it until you came in, you silly bitch." Did you say that?
No.
Do you remember what you did say?
It was something like, Gillian's had one of her turns, so I've told her she can go home.
Had Miss Hayes said she was having one of her turns?
No, she hadn't.
So, why did you tell Miss Foster that she had?
I did it to protect Gillian. She looked so daft rushing out like that.
Did Miss Foster say anything to you?
She called me a dirty sod.
Not a dirty pig?
A dirty sod.
Miss Foster in the habit of using bad language?
Well, she's that sort of lass, isn't she? Modern.
What was your reaction when she'd accused you like this?
I was flabbergasted.
Did you do anything?
I told her she could pack up and get out. She was fired.
I see. Do you know the complainant's mother, Mrs. Hayes?
I know of her.
Because of the dispute with the local council about her lodger.
Yes.
Rather an acrimonious dispute, wasn't it?
Very.
So why did you employ her daughter after you'd been involved in a dispute with her mother? It was rather inviting trouble, wasn't it?
Gillian's qualifications were first class, and that's all that concerned me. Besides, she seemed a nice girl. A very nice girl.
So, let's get it quite straight what you're telling the jury, Councillor Bolton. You say that you never put your hand down Miss Hayes' blouse?
Never.
That you never touched her shoulder?
Never.
That you never attempted to undo her brassiere?
No.
And that you did not fondle her breast?
No, never.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton.
What you are, in fact, saying is that all the allegations Miss Hayes has made are lies.
Either that, or she's imagined them.
How old are you, Mr. Bolton?
50.
An active, virile man for your age, would you say?
I'm fit enough. I have to be.
Are you married?
Yes.
Live with your wife?
Of course I do.
What is my learned friend hoping to achieve with this line of questioning, Your Honour?
I am merely trying to fill in the background of the man.
Don't spend too long over it, Miss Tate.
I won't, Your Honour. Is your married life happy?
Perfectly happy.
Now, would you tell us again why you think Miss Hayes left your office with such alacrity? Ran out, I think your words were.
Well, yes, I've thought about it a lot.
And your conclusions?
Well, the only explanation I've come to is Barbara bursting in like that upset Gillian, you know, made her jump.
So you think Miss Hayes was merely startled by Miss Foster?
I don't think my client is saying that was the sole reason for Miss Hayes' sudden departure, Your Honour.
Well, what are you saying, Mr. Bolton? Mr. Bolton.
Oh, that she must have imagined I was meddling with her because my hand was on the back of her chair.
Which is a habit of yours, resting your hand on the back of your secretary's chair?
Yes.
In order to rest your bad back?
Yes.
You don't seem to have rested your bad back while standing in the witness box.
It's not so bad today.
I see. Had Miss Hayes ever ran red-faced and agitated from your office before?
No.
A good secretary, was she?
Very.
Good shorthand.
Excellent.
Very efficient, in fact.
First class.
And you're saying this ideal secretary shot out of your office like a startled rabbit because somebody entered. A colleague, a familiar face. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you expect the jury to believe?
What other reason could she have had?
The reason she told the court, Mr. Bolton, that after annoying her for several months, you finally went too far on that particular afternoon. Now, maybe it began as an innocent diversion, blowing on her exposed neck. But it very soon changed into something quite different. An indefensible and indecent assault upon her person by somebody who ought to have known better.
Not true.
Now, you are also saying that Miss Foster is lying as well as Miss Hayes.
Mistaken, not lying.
Mistaken about both what she saw and what you said to her?
Yes.
a ladies' man, Mr. Bolton?
I'm not sure what that means.
Are you a womanizer? Do you like the opposite sex?
That's two questions, isn't it?
Then please answer both of them.
I like women. What normal man doesn't? But I'm no womanizer.
I suggest you are, Mr. Bolton, and that you waste no opportunity to indulge yourself, especially if your victim is as inexperienced and timid as Miss Hayes was.
Not true.
Now, your counsel mentioned the dispute with Mrs. Hayes. Isn't it rather remarkable that you should employ her daughter?
But I've told you why I did it. Gilligan's qualifications were first class.
Not because she was so obviously unsophisticated and naive then. Fair game, in other words. I mean, we all know that you stood to gain very little from your other female employer, Miss Barbara Foster.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Did you employ Miss Foster, by the way, as you did Miss Hayes?
It was done while I was away.
I see. The fact is, Mr. Bolton, that everything these two young girls have told the court is true.
Definitely not true.
Well, why should they lie?
I have no idea.
It's very simple, Mr. Bolton. They are telling the truth, and you are lying.
That concludes the case for the defence, Your Honour.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Would you return to the dock? Now, it looks as though we might be able to conclude our part of the proceedings by lunchtime.